Sound and data.
So, Ivana, why don't you introduce yourself to the Sound and Data Channel listeners
Okay,
and
okay.
your perspective on, what you think
Yeah,
we should talk about.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in India, and my parents were like very, very variable characters. And my both my parents were professors. One taught English and German, the other taught mathematics. And they had variable music tastes as well. And then I moved here, and I kind of carried a little bit of them with me. Both had disappeared from my life by then, both had passed away. And when I
Oh,
came here, I kind of started writing, and my return to creativity started with writing. And
yeah. I noticed that your
then,
first degree is in English literature, right?
yes,
Uh huh.
yes, and
And what part of
yes.
India? As long as just out of curiosity.
So my mother was from the north, which is Kashmir,
Yeah, yeah.
and my father was from the east, which is Bengal.
Uh huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but however, my mom was kind of raised by an Irish divine mother who lived
Ah.
with us.
Oh.
So I had kind of like a very variable music taste. My father's family, we lived in a very large family of aunts and uncles and everybody. So my father's family, they were into classical Indian music. Every one of them played one instrument or the other, a
Uh,
large family, uncles and aunts. My father even played an instrument and percussion. I would wake up to the buzzing drone sounds of tanpura, which is like a long-necked plucked string instrument, played
sure.
just for
I know.
harmony,
Yeah. Right.
and with its large spectrum of overtones. And then I would smell the jasmine flowers right next to my window. And sometimes a street bard, singing folk songs. This was inevitably followed, by a rustle of newspapers. For my dad was always a early morning crossword solver. So it was kind of like a mix of scents, sounds, texts that I woke up to. However, my primary interest was in percussion, the tabla, which was the Indian drum.
Sure.
And I was also like, I had a very good sense of rhythm. I was told by my parents that I shouldn't try to sing because I didn't have an Indian voice to sing. And I kind of like wrote that off my chart of things to do in life. And then I started doing theater. I was a real theater person for like 10, 12 years.
What
And
form of theater? Like Eugene
um,
O'Neill and that kind of stuff, or?
no, just any kind of theater, all kinds of languages, Indian languages,
Uh
English,
huh.
and any kind of theater. I was passionately into theater, and dance. So that dance and theater writing I carried here till once I came here, I decided, you know what, I should try writing some lyrics, and that's when I joined Berklee College of Music, the online courses.
Right.
And online, I did like a 3-year course with various professors. However, one professor, Mr. Shane Adams, he was my kind of mentor, I could say. I'm very grateful to him, for whatever he groomed me into, and he let me just be, I was kind of like a rebel, and I wanted to learn the rules and break them. So he allowed me to do that,
Uh huh.
and after that, my actual process of writing and thinking that what is sound, what is art, and how these things could go together started when we moved to Cambridge, and I was homeschooling my son,
Uh huh.
and
Yeah. I homeschooled my kids too, so I'm familiar with
oh, you
that.
did?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
wonderful is that? Yeah, okay. So I homeschooled my son, and he was kind of like very young when we came here. And started taking him to MIT's various, courses at MIT.
Right.
And while he had a mentor by then, who was grooming him to apply to college, found a mentor. He just came in his life, and thanks to that mentor, I got some time of my own,
Aha.
um, to merge with what is technology, something that I wasn't at all interested when I was in India. What is science? And I started seeing, hearing, smelling, singing science in a span of 2 years, um, through literature, and through music. And it's
Okay.
kind of a difficult thing to explain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That I was going to go. I didn't quite get that part, but go ahead. That's interesting.
Yeah. So it started with me just writing melodies and songs based on a lot of research that was going on at MIT. I met a lot of professors, scientists, scholars. They were very open, and they allowed me to delve into their research, understand from my perspective, not from theirs, because I was not qualified.
Right.
So, from my perspective, from a metaphorical, from a perspective of illusions,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was kind of sculpting space with sounds, so to speak, you know. So, for instance, if I heard the sound of the ATM, at MIT, or, the recycling bin, or even a sound of a plopping, it translated to a dot, a circle, a sphere, a nothingness, and
Mm-hmm.
then I connected them to memories, and which connected again to a rhythm. So it was kind of always a back and forth, a melody, or, a phonetic fragment. So then I started writing this journal. I'm like, okay, I should write the process of what's happening. And it became a kind of stream of consciousness journal. It was like I just wrote what I felt,
Uh-huh.
not what was supposed to be grammatically and format wise correct. I just wanted to be myself, for a change. So that's how the process started. And then I came about to finishing this whole project in a span of like 5.5 years. Turned out to be like a 460-page book with illustrations. I also draw a little bit, and the illustrations were, however, made graphically by my student from India,
Uh-huh.
and so she did the graphics. I wasn't trained to do the graphics.
What's the title of the book?
It's called A Square and a Half: The Colors of Sounding. I just released it. You know what, Scott? I think I should send you a PDF copy of that.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. I saw the
Yeah.
press release about it and read that, but I didn't. I'm still trying to make the connection between how that influenced. I mean, how data itself influenced the sounds of your music.
Yes. So, for example, as I was saying, I grew up, in this place where it was always a mixed influence.
Right.
So, for me, sound is the means by which I kind of sense a transmission of information or knowledge.
Uh-huh.
It could be spoken or unspoken. I kind of
Well, one of
know
the
that.
things you shared with me was this sort of sense of the acoustical spaces, particularly the sound of the bird in that large architectural
Yes,
setting,
yes,
which kind of was a way of experiencing an acoustic space by way of a digital recording.
yes, yes. So uh, I would ask myself, what does a void sound like? And I would go to Killian Court at MIT and just stand there, and I would feel for the first time, in my life, colors and sounds fusing in my experience. You could say it was automatic, almost involuntary.
Hmm.
Um, for example, um, one afternoon I saw these green edges in a fragment of my memory as I was standing there. And every memory for me had always a sensation and sound. It's just that I couldn't ever articulate it or didn't find the need to articulate it. And that happened to me strangely through reading scientific articles, and I would sense something. I would sense a memory. It's very hard to explain, unless you read the book or you kind of like go through the book. But I'm going to try and make it and summarize it as much as I can. So, for example, green to me suggests the scent of like an unripened green lemon. And this in turn brings to mind some lines from a novella by D.H. Lawrence, who always influenced me in my perceptions in literature.
Hmm.
And I think the lines were, I may not be totally correct, a cold, blossomless, resinous sap, surging and oozing gum from that pallid, brownish bark, and the wind hissing in the needles like a vast nest of serpents. So I have a quirky mind, which tends to store like a lot of thoughts,
Yeah.
sensations in an imaginary basket, so to speak. So I would take that information and then translate that into some kind of like a synthetic sound in my, I use just a simple, system for making sounds at my place.
Oh, what
And
would that be? What's the simple system?
I use sonar.
Oh, okay.
Sonar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that was what was suggested by Berkeley, and I just stuck to that because I'm kind of old school and I'm not very good with technology, strangely.
That's
So I
fine.
stuck to that, and I would write the music and then send it to a cellist, who's a friend of mine. Now he's back in Israel. He's a very good cellist, and he would create the cello parts of the songs for me, and I would just sing on the spot, never re-recording the songs, never deciding the melody. It was kind of like a chance music, for me.
Uh-huh.
Like it was just like on the spot, whatever I am thinking, I translate it to music.
So
It was
extemporized like the writing, sort of.
yes, yes. It was always like chance based,
Mm-hmm.
So I think my interest in sound as an art form naturally grew after I heard Laurie Anderson's Sharky's Night,
Mm-hmm.
and that is when I heard, and then I thought maybe sound as an art, as me being a kind of like a strange, fragmented writer, um, could be this, and that is when I heard William Burroughs, who read out the lyrics, in Sharky's Night,
Right.
and I also learned about, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Brian Geisen.
Yeah, Brian Geisen, that's right.
Yeah, and that's when I first heard. It must be about 10 years ago. That's the first time I heard about him.
Uh-huh.
And apparently Geisen and Burroughs met in Tangier, and then they had this chemistry in Paris,
Right.
And I was intrigued, mostly not in much of. I didn't read much about Burroughs and Geisen. I was intrigued by Geisen's magical, almost mystical cut-up technique. A technique of randomly collaging texts,
Right.
and that is kind of the technique that is used in my storybook.
And
In my book.
he also Geisen did that musically. He used the same sort of cut up techniques to construct musical stuff.
Yes, and that's what I kind of hazily read. I'm being honest. I don't know
No, that's
much.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he said that if you have a new poem and you just select the passages and fill a page with excerpts, as many pages as you like, and then visit your memories and your dance and your voice, and look for a harmonic strain. And the green skies are open, and there's perfume, and through the great skies, you hear the bugle burning flesh children to mist, something like that.
Yeah, right. I mean,
And
they
yeah,
were known for that dream machine, the sort of self
yes,
hypnosis,
yes, yes. That was
flickering
it.
light thing that induced these states of hypnagogic, both music and poetry, actually.
Yes, and I was totally mesmerized by that,
Yeah.
and
That's the right term, I guess. Mesmerized.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to kind of like it's either what I write or what I do. People either love it or they don't know what it is, and they're like, okay, it's fine, So there is no middle way with what I do, and I'm fine with that because I'm kind of like weird, and I'm trying to let that weirdness go out there.
Well,
Because
there was one other topic that caught my interest, just sort of preparing to talk to you and stuff, and that was the stuff about cryptography.
yeah,
You were referring to your son had done some work with, but then you made this reference to Joyce in one of your Facebook posts that intrigued me because, well, I don't know. Do you,
yes, yes.
is
So
that relevant at all, or?
yeah, because his study in cryptography is completely different from my very, very little understanding.
Yeah,
He goes
right.
to MIT, and I have no idea what he does. He's a mathematics student,
Mm,
and I don't know anything. He just tries to simplistically explain, and I get like wonder-eyed, and I take the little information that I get, and from there I get kind of like a systematic derangement of the senses, you could call it,
yeah, yeah. Well,
you know, and it's like a cut up, and I take these words and the information, and I know that Joyce was interested in like secret writing, and I don't know where that he got that from. And that's all I knew about cryptography before my son started taking it, at classes.
yeah, right, right. Well, that's
And
an interesting angle on cryptography, that's for sure. I mean, the other
yeah,
thing is like George Antheil and Hedy Lamarr
uh-huh.
making that uh, device for shooting torpedoes that has ended up being the way the cell phone works, which is cryptographic, and it's channel skipping technology that they sort of patented and is a big part of the way cell phones work now. Uh,
Wow.
but it's coming from this art place. I mean, Antel was a bad boy of Paris and did a lot of stuff with uh, player pianos, and Hedy Lamarr, was a famous movie star. It's very,
Wow.
so this place between art and science always, a lot of times comes from the science space. But what I'm hearing, what you're talking about, is like, well, let's come from this dream space into something that makes sense relative to science.
Yes. So it was always, it's very strange, Scott. I have to admit, my father was a very good mathematician, and he was really sick of me kind of just barely scraping through math classes. And and I never showed interest in science or math. And I know the reason why, with due apology to the Indian education system. Our literature is amazing because we follow the British system, but our mathematics and sciences kind of too bookish, and there
Uh-huh.
was nothing that sparked the interest, the imagination. It was just a black and white book which didn't color my senses, and I had to be colored in the senses somehow to write, to sing, to think, and
Uh-huh.
to imagine. You know,
Yeah,
and
they do.
MIT did
Yeah.
that for me. MIT did that, but from the spaces to the research. If I can, open my book, and I'll send you my book, and maybe that would help you understand it a
Yeah,
little
no, that's
better.
all right. I'm getting a sense. Yeah.
And it was like, for example, I would pick up like a science journal that the undergraduates publish called the Merge, MURJ. And I would find an article there, and I found an article by, Dr. Lawrence Chitka, False Memories in Bumblebees. And that absolutely sparked my interest. And
Very poetic, actually.
yeah, and it was cognitive science. And Lars has currently written a book himself,
Hmm.
and his writing was so beautiful, so easy to understand, and his research was explained in the most simple manner that I've ever read science research. So I kind of started communicating, and we had a 2-year communication just on emails.
Uh-huh.
And because Lars is not from here, Lars is from the University of the Queen Mary University of London,
Uh-huh.
and he's the founder of the Research Center for Psychology there. And he and I sparked a friendship, and I kind of like, and then started making music together because he plays the guitar as well. So I reread his paper, the false memories and bumblebees, and my imagination was not, of course, relying on facts or logic. You know, it
Yeah.
was more of an illusion. It's more like an invisible laughter. Cutting through the wings of the sun. And getting strangest of memories, just sparking through my brain. Because again, I went back to cut-ups, like a collage of words, heard, or senses heard, or senses translated through words or through sounds.
Right.
So I know in India, synesthesia is considered a folly.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah, it is.
It's
It is.
actually, I mean, there's two sides to synesthesia. One is sort of aesthetic, but the other one is actually pathological. I mean, there's absolutely people that hear colors and that kind of stuff as a physiology kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of like, I regained that confidence. I forgot, all my inner voices that told me that this is right, this is wrong.
Mm.
Because in MIT, everything was possible. In MIT, I did an invisible education at MIT. Like I was like an open researcher, just meeting professors, scholars,
Well,
and they
I
were
noticed your comments
wonderful.
about Todd. Shoot, names.
Makeover. Yes,
Yeah, Todd
yes,
Mackover. I
yes,
I had
yes.
I had some collaboration with him at Interval back in the '90s, so I've met him a few
Oh,
times.
wow.
But
Isn't that special?
yeah, he's an interesting fellow, and I got the chance to see his robot opera at the Dallas opera thing. He's always sort of integrated a lot of newer technology into his work, which is
Yes, yes, and I think he's um like a figure that I follow. That's nothing I do,
mm,
but it's somebody who inspires me. So what his range of understanding and knowledge is so vast that I'm always learning, and I get triggered in my own journey, which you could call a journey of collages, of sound art, or a journey of the senses at random.
uh-huh,
You know so I just give in to the patterns of thoughts that don't necessarily have to be text or images or sounds. It just cut up and layered at random.
uh-huh.
Um, if I may
But
compare
one
it,
of your big inspirations is the scientific sources. It seems like.
yes, yes, and it is very funny, Scott. I was writing those really stupid lyrics, earlier after my after my workday because I was trying to meet up with what people wanted to hear. And that was not me. That wasn't me. It wasn't until I came to MIT and until I met these professors and learned about the research from my perspective that I kind of opened up,
Mm,
to what could be possible. You know, so like Geisen would layer these texts over sounds, and came to be, I guess, known as one of the founders of sound poetry. So I felt liberated by this.
have you looked into the machine learning and AI things that are happening with language? I mean, there's some. It's not coming to me right now, but there is a movement of people that are letting like machine learning create poetry and that kind of stuff. Uh,
Yes,
AI
yes,
weirdness. What's her name? Janelle Shannon, I think. She did the thing. Very funny posting about like this neural net that created these very strange paint colors, for example.
yeah. But whenever I speak to people, either they really get me, like Todd gets me.
Yeah, yeah.
I've talked to him at length.
Uh-huh.
Todd really gets me. But there are some people I met so many professors. The professors who I met, I know they all got me, but there are people who don't get me. And so I don't try to. explain too much. If they get me, great. If they don't get me, it's fine. I'm just weird. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
All
So
right. Well,
so sound studies and literary studies come together to me. As I listen to or interpret music.
so how much is it important for the lyrics to be understood? Uh, well, let's see. I mean, well, I don't know exactly what I'm asking. It's like lyrics are important, but the music that carries the lyrics sometimes is more important than the lyrics. I'm
Yes,
thinking of the
that's very
Pixies
true.
and the Breeders. There's certain bands that you can't really understand what they're saying, but you get the feeling, and it comes across in the music anyway.
Yes, I
Portishead
should
is
send
sometimes
you.
mumbling, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I should send you the song that I wrote. There are like 20, I would say, soundscapes that come with the book that I
Uh huh.
created with the project.
Well, I heard some
And
of those. I mean, you shared some of that with me. So,
yes, I'm
yeah,
going to share some of those. And I think some of those were okay, and
yeah,
some of them people could actually relate with. People who didn't know anything about my work,
yeah.
anything to do with what I do and how crazy I am. They kind of like got the music as, like, for example, the song that I wrote on Lars's research,
Right.
you know, and it was based on, it's on the bumblebees, and from there I kind of like went to several spaces in my head, unseen, dripping with rain and magpies and the sun and the winds. And I ended up writing a song called I Wind, I Wish, And
Mm-hmm.
Lars, being a scientist, he's like, what's his title? What's I Wind, I Wish? What's that title?
Well,
And then I had to
that's
explain it to
poetry.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of broke it down to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh my God, why did I make you deconstruct? I'm so sorry. So I think that song I made, a friend of mine, she's also from MIT, but she's a data scientist. She has nothing to do with what I do. And I just told her to listen to it, And she said that I felt healed, the songs. I
Oh,
don't know what was singing in the lyrics. She couldn't understand the lyrics. Um, and I didn't want her to understand the lyrics. I just wanted to hear the sounds, If I was being able to make a prosodic connect with the sounds and the lyrics,
right.
and and that's exactly what I wanted to, because I was feeling healed as I was writing it. It had a very romantic yet a very distant, kind of like a memory trace in that song. So I thought it was a nice lyric, but she
Uh huh.
wasn't interested in the lyric. She was like, I love the fact that you kind of changed the percussion, changed the rhythms, went from one harmony to the other. And I don't know where you went, but wherever you went, I went with it.
Oh,
So,
that's great. Well,
so
for some
I
reason,
think I should
all the way
share that
through the
with you.
conversation, I keep thinking of 100 Years of Solitude. Marquez's famous. I mean, I've only heard it in translation. I didn't read the original Spanish, but it has the same sort of kind of like sense of the science, but also kind of a magical realism thing going on.
Exactly, exactly. That's how I could. I make it too long, and you made it in short. I kind of I
Well,
make it
listen,
very
we try to
long.
keep these little chats down to about 30 minutes, which is just about where we are.
Uh-huh.
So I think I'm going to call this fully done, even though we just sort of touched on so many things. And
Yes,
I look forward to talking to you more. So this
yes.
is so Ivanna Muse is working at the fringes of the sound and data area by being inspired by science and creating new musical and sound art pieces that sound incredibly interesting. I'm going to definitely put a link to your SoundCloud stuff in the description for the podcast. And it's been really great talking to you.
Thank you, Jordan. I'm learning a lot from you. Like most of what you said, didn't get in my head, but I got traces of information which I'm going to build a soundscape from.
Oh, great. Well, I'll do the same then. We can share soundscapes. I mean, I'm mostly working lately in using chess. I'm just in this situation where I have to
Are
figure
you
out.
serious?
Well, I did a
That's
piece
very
based on
intriguing.
Reunion by Cage and Duchamp, and
Oh, wow.
we're reiterating that piece. But it's weird because it's part of the like Dallas Mavericks esports team, so it's like kind of all over the map. But anyway, enough about my thing. I'm really fascinated by your approach to all this stuff, and it's really great to get a chance to talk about uh,
Thank you,
your
Scott.
approach.
I'm going to get to my email and send you the PDF of the book and a
That's
couple of,
fantastic. And
yeah,
send a link so people can buy it if they're interested in having a copy and stuff.
I'm actually planning to release the book with the school, the starting of the Cambridge Creation Lab.
Mm.
So I'm trying to do that because the book is going to be a guiding factor in what I teach in the school.
And
So I'm
what is that?
trying,
We haven't talked about the creative. What is that? The Cambridge
uh,
Creative
yeah, so Cambridge Creation Lab, it's like,
Creation Lab.
yeah, it's like an online school that I'm thinking of starting.
Ah,
Like it's in the works right now.
ah,
So yeah, so I'm going to send you a paper also that just Roger told me to write,
ah.
and I just wrote it, like a good schoolgirl, and I'm going to just finish making some changes that he suggested,
Okay.
and format it better. And I'm going to send you the paper that I wrote, what Cambridge Creation Lab is all about.
Okay,
So I
great. Yeah.
early 2020 we should be starting the online school.
Sounds fantastic, and we'll stay in touch about that. And as that develops, maybe we'll do another get together online here.
Okay, that would be fantastic.
Thank you
Very
so
nice.
much, Ivanna.
Thank you. Take care.
Sound and data.